Hey guys, and welcome back to another training mesocycle. Why I did so, and also how you can design your own strength training mesocycle so you can also get stronger. So, before I hopped into the first week of the program, I made sure to test my 5 rep maxes on both my standing overhead press and flat barbell bench press. So, I tested these to get my estimated 1 rep max, and I'd work off of percentages for the main lifts of the program. So, since I have been in hypertrophy training for the last few months to about a year, I have definitely lost some strength, but this is just a temporary loss as my central nervous system is not used to lifting heavier weights because the intensity is lower with higher volume hypertrophy training. So, this is nothing to worry about though, as when I go back to a dedicated period of strength training, I'll be able to get this strength back. But the difference is that this time I will have more muscle mass, and the more muscle mass you have, the greater potential you will have for strength gains. So don't worry about the temporary loss in strength, and you will get it back. So my reason for getting back to strength training is I want to lift heavy again, as I really enjoy lifting heavy, but also I want to allow my body to resensitize to high volume hypertrophy training since I've been doing this for quite some time. So you'll notice that when you're doing high volume hypertrophy training, your body's going to become desensitized to it, and the stimulus is no longer going to work as well as it once did. So the only way to resensitize your body to this type of training is to perform some low volume strength training, which I would do for a mesocycle or two. So that's what I'm doing right now, and after my two mesocycles of strength training, I'm going to go back to high volume hypertrophy training where I can look to build more muscle mass. So as for my mesocycle design, I went with a 4-week accumulation phase and 1 week of deload. So each week the entire rep calculator. Then, so my reps and sets would remain the same during the week, but on the final week I'd hit a rep max on my main lifts where I try to crank out as many reps as I can, really push it as hard as I can to experience greater strength adaptations. Now, fatigue is going to be really high during this set since it's going to be very close, if not at failure, and also the intensity has been increasing over the last few weeks of training, and this also increases the fatigue. But the thing is that I'm going to have a deload week the week after, so keeping this in mind, I can train as hard as I really want to, since during the deload week I'm going to be cutting the volume and intensity in half, which is going to allow for some recovery before I get back to harder training. So each day I have a primary lift for the day. So for example, it could be an overhead axial bar press, and I'd perform a top set with that, which I'd work out via percentages. Then after the top set, I would drop the weight by 5% and perform a back off set, and I would do all the rest of my sets like this. So why would I set up my training like this? So the top set is going to provide the big strength stimulus so that we can adapt to this stimulus weekly. But you'll notice that if you train with this heavy weight for the majority of your sets or all your sets, your fatigue is you're gonna unnecessarily get too fatigued, and this is not a good thing. With the back off sets, I get to hone my technique more, I get to work on the movement, and I get to get in some volume, which is going to help to increase my strength without the fatigue. Strength can be helped by possessing bigger muscles, an efficient central nervous system which is used to lifting heavier weights, and you get your nervous system used to lifting heavy weights by constantly exposing it to heavier weights, so heavy strength training. And then also there's a skill component to lifting heavy. So for example, the guy that's going to overhead press consistently for weeks will probably overhead press more than the guy who just bench presses for most of those weeks but then switches to overhead pressing during the final week. So if their body weight, stress levels and sleep are the same. So this is because the first guy is more used to the movement, his body has become accustomed to the movement, and he doesn't really have to think about it as such, he just performs it. Also during my program, I kept all my main lifts within the 4 to 6 rep range. So since I'm easing back into strength training again, I don't really want to go for the really low, really high intensity reps so far just yet, as it's going to be a big risk for a catastrophic injury. So it's a training in with the 4 to 6 rep range is a good midpoint between high reps and low reps. And as my strength block progresses over the weeks, I can look to increase the intensity and drop the reps as my body becomes more accustomed to the movements and I get more confidence under the bar. I'm still rehabbing my knee tendonitis at the moment, so this has meant that I can actually increase my pressing frequency to 3 times a week. So I've split this into one heavy day, one midday, and one light day. Now I split them into like this since I allow my body for some recovery between days as different muscle fibers are going to be trained, and also I reduce the risk of injuries for the same reason. And you can also think about, like with the heavy day, you're really chasing that big strength adaptation, while in the other days you're getting in volume, practicing your technique, which is going to support your heavier day. I also chose different pressing variations, so I made sure to include both an overhead pressing variation and an horizontal. So the overhead pressing variation is going to help you get stronger in the horizontal press, since a lot of the same muscles are used, such as your triceps, your front delts, and also you'll need to have a strong core and upper back to support the weight. So this is really good, especially for the big, heavy compound strength movements, which require you to have a strong core and upper back to maintain structural integrity. So as for my accessory movements, I used reps in reserve as a way to increase difficulty each week, and I did this by increasing my proximity to failure by either adding weight or reps while staying within my target rep range. So your accessory lifts are going to help to keep your ligaments, your tendons and muscles healthy. They're going to strengthen your muscles for the big compound lifts, and you're going to experience some muscular hypertrophy, and having a bigger muscle cell is going to help you get stronger. So all of my accessories were done in the 5 to 10 and 10 to 15 rep range, and I didn't want to dedicate too much of my volume to the higher rep ranges, since I'm in a strength phase and I want to save these higher rep ranges for when I go back to a hypertrophy phase, where it makes a lot more sense to train with higher reps. Okay, so one thing that I do like doing before one of my main pressing movements of the day is place an upper back accessory movement, such as a barbell row or a lat pull down before it. So this helps me to prime me for the press. I'm going to feel a lot safer, more solid during the press, and my performance is going to be increased. So what happens if we just train the anterior side of our body? Well, you're going to experience muscular imbalances, as your anterior side of your body is a lot stronger than your posterior side. So this increases the chances for injury, but also your performance is not going to be the same. So if you have a bigger, stronger back, especially upper back, you're going to reduce rounding in the deadlift. You're going to maintain an upright and erect back when squatting, and your pressing is also going to be stronger. So both having a strong upper back, erectors, core, these are going to help you to provide more structural integrity. So it's going to keep you solid, and you'll be able to transfer greater force into the bar and ultimately finish the lift. So for example, if you have an overhead press, for an overhead press you need to have a very strong core and upper back to hold that weight in place. And then your prime movers of the lift, which are your triceps and anterior delts, are going to ultimately press the weight. But without a strong core and upper back, you're going to find it increasingly difficult to press that weight and apply greater force to the movement. Also, it's worth mentioning that a lot of people have posture problems due to the anterior side of their bodies being more dominant compared to their posterior side. So if you build up the posterior side of your body, like the upper back, you're going to notice that you're going to feel healthier. Your shoulders, you'll have less aches and pains around your shoulders and neck area. Your performance is going to be better, and these are really important for longevity as well as just living a higher quality of life. So at the moment, I'm still rehabbing my knee tendonitis, which is slowly improving, but I've had to make some modifications to my leg training. So I have no heavy loading of the quadriceps during this time. I'm keeping all reps slow and controlled, and I'm only increasing the weight when my body gives me the green light. So this happened because I've been training my quadriceps a lot, and the volume may have been a bit high, or my other muscles, smaller muscles, have become, in comparison to my quadriceps, a lot weaker, and so it's given me some knee issues. So in order to counteract this, I'm strengthening up all of those smaller stabilizing muscles, such as the adductors, which I'm strengthening via Copenhagen planks. I'm strengthening up my hip flexors by using hip marches, and I'm strengthening up the glute medius by barbell hip thrusts into my mesocycle, as I want to train my glutes directly, as I've been mainly just training them indirectly with Romanian deadlifts. So having stronger glutes is going to again provide more balance between the anterior and posterior side of our body. It's going to allow us to have a stronger squat and deadlift, and it's going to help improve hip extension, which is important when sprinting. So as I was saying, all of these smaller muscles, such as your adductors, your glute medius, these play an important role in stabilizing your hip and knee during a movement like the squat, for example. So if we can get these muscles as strong as possible, then our body is going to feel safer, and we can ultimately press through our quads and use our glutes to lift the weight, and our body is not going to feel inhibited because it's saying to itself, oh, I'm not strong, I don't feel safe enough because these other muscles are weak, don't feel steady during the movement. So if you get those stronger, I promise you will have a bigger squat. With strengthening up our glutes, so they improve your hip extension, and if you're someone who sprints a lot, maybe you're a sprinter, if you can increase your hip extension, you're going to be able to sprint faster. So we'd first do this by increasing the muscle size via muscular hypertrophy. You can then convert that muscle into strength with heavy strength compound moves. We'd then move on to power training before finally going into speed training. And if you're doing your sprinting drills and working on your sprinting technique, you should definitely be able to hit some new PBs for sprinting. So these rehab exercises that I've been doing, I usually paired them with the main lift of the day, and just to hit them, get them out of the way as soon as I can. So the goal here is to keep doing them until my knees feel healthier and I can lift heavier weight. So I'm making sure to increase the weight on the Bulgarian split squat until I have no more knee pain. And then once I have no more knee pain, I'll look to incorporate more bilateral leg exercises, such as the barbell squat. I think one thing a lot of people forget to train is the core. So if you're an athlete or someone who likes to lift big weights, or you're constantly required to change direction, having a big core is definitely non-negotiable. So like I was saying, the core is going to help you to transfer more force into the barbell. You're going to be able to sprint faster. You're going to be able to change direction quicker. You're going to have less injuries. So during this mesocycle, I'm training both my lateral and frontal planes. So I've been doing this via cable wood chops, which are going to train more the rotational element of the core as well as the obliques, and also offset carries, which are going to train the obliques but also the erectors and the deep transverse muscles, as my trunk maintain an erect and stable position so I don't fall over due to the heavy weight by my side. These are going to transfer really well into the big compound lifts, and I should definitely see some increase in strength. Also, I've added in some overhead press and farmers carries, and you could argue that these are not the best exercise to use if you were wanting to train with as much volume as possible, as the fatigue these exercises produce is quite a lot compared to some other exercises that could be used. but they are quite fun. I really enjoy them, and that's why I've included them in my training. So it's always a good idea to have fun in training, have some element of enjoyment, which is ultimately going to allow you to stick to the routine and get reap those long benefits of long-term consistent training, which you will need if you want to make long-lasting progress. Going into my diet here, so my diet at the moment, as it always is, I eat mainly whole foods, so foods that you'd find in the countryside or in a farm, but I'm also making sure to add in some more less nutritionally dense foods, quote unquote treat foods, as I'm not in a fat loss phase at the moment, and there's no point in needlessly limiting these foods at the moment. So I think a lot of people chase the optimal results and they want to eat like all clean foods, which yes, you should be eating mostly clean foods. They're going to help with increased recovery, better performance. You're going to have better health. But if you're not eating any of these treat foods, like as humans, we do like these foods, and I think you're shooting yourself in the foot if you cut out all of them. Because when it comes to a fat loss phase, when you're not going to have the luxury of eating these types of foods, you will find that your cravings are going to get progressively worse during this phase, and your will to is going to decrease as you want to eat these foods since you haven't eaten them in a long time. So before you start a fat loss phase, it's a wise idea to just eat some treat foods here and there while keeping them in moderation, so you're not going to build up these really big cravings for them during a fat loss phase, which is going to decrease the chances that you're going to have a successful fat loss phase. But that being said, I do prefer eating like boiled carbohydrate sources, potatoes, boiled vegetables, which have lots of micronutrients, and a lean protein source, which is going to help with recovery and grow more muscle tissue. I notice then I also feel fuller for longer, and this helps me to maintain my body weight as I don't needlessly increase my body fat. So, as I deload this week, I'm giving my body a nice rest before I start my next phase of training, which is going to be another mesocycle strength training, but this time I'm going to be eating for fat loss, doing the tough things. Now it's going to be like a compounding effect, and it's going to allow me to gain more muscle in the subsequent phase after that. So if you can do the hard things, they're all going to add up, and you're going to get better results. So get them done, grow from it, and then thank yourself for showing up when you see the great results that you will have in a few weeks and months. So guys, there it is for today. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about my training and how I set up my mesocycle. If you liked it, feel free to like the video, follow my account for more educational content about training and nutrition, and I will look forward to chatting with you guys soon. So, talk to you soon.